Meeting back started about a minute here. Monday, July 1st, to order. Everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Sorry, I forgot to pull my sheet out again here. As we always do, we begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the territory of the Ottawa and Chippewa peoples who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. Thank you for your strength and resilience in protecting this land and inspiring us to uphold our responsibilities to do the same. As we move forward, we will now go to roll call with Mr. Marantet. Thank you.
Yes, good evening, Commissioner Anderson,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson. Here. Commissioner Shaw.
Here.
Commissioner Stanley.
Here.
Commissioner Werner.
Here.
Commissioner Treadwell, and Mayor Shamrow.
Here. And we can now move on to announcements from the city manager.
Nothing really to announce, but just to say that I'm enjoying my first Cherry Festival, and the weather's been beautiful, and I got to see the Blue Angels for the first time as well on Sunday, and I'm really enjoying being here during this time of year.
Excellent, thank you. And we'll move city clerk.
Yes, just one meeting to announce for this week, the week of July 1st. The Downtown Development Authority's Finance Committee will meet on Tuesday, July 2nd. That'll be at 1:30 p.m. in the committee room on the second floor of the commission chamber, second floor of the governmental center. We're recruiting for a number of board and committees that help power city government, so anyone interested in volunteering, if you're interested or any of these sound of appeal to you, please contact the city clerk's office. Those include the Brown Bridge Advisory Committee, Board of Zoning Appeals, Coast Guard City Committee, Grand Traverse Commons Joint Planning Commission, Historic Districts Commission, and the Human Rights Commission, and finally Parks and Recreation Commission. And then I just wanted to mention, of course, that the city's made some strides, of course, with respect to restoration of services. Information regarding services that continue to impact the general public can be found at traversitymi.gov. The first large mailing of absentee ballots for all city voters was sent on Friday, June 29th. And those are, of course, for the August 6th election. So if anyone signed up for an absentee ballot or has any interest in checking the status of their ballot, can go to michigan.gov/vote. We've also had some voters who have been reached out to by organizations that don't have knowledge regarding whether or not someone's on the permanent absentee ballot list. So if you want to check that status, you can always contact my office or go to michigan.gov/vote. And that's all that I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll just have you keep going then and move on to the consent calendar, please.
Yes, 1 second.
Pardon me, are we removing number 2?
We will be, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I wanted to mention that the item number 2, which is a liquor license transfer for Brick Wheels, does not require city commission approval. All off-premise licenses, which is what this is, under city ordinance are issued by my office. They meet the merits under the current regulations, and so we are issuing them that license. So apologies that was on there. That item should be officially removed. With that, the
A really quick question, if I can, about that. Though those are issued by your office, they are still permitted by the city as well, so they are subject to the other rules of city permitting, such as if there are infractions or anything like that, they can have their license removed like any other type of license. Is that correct?
Yes, everything's the
Thank
same,
you.
except it doesn't require city commission approval.
Thank you.
Yes, the purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public can ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed from it and considered individually. Any items remaining on the consent calendar are approved by a single commission action adopting the consent calendar. Item 1, consideration of approving the minutes of the June 17, 2024, June 18, 2024, and June 24, 2024 meetings of the City Commission. Approval recommended. Item 2 was removed from the consent calendar and the agenda altogether. Item 3, consideration of authorizing a purchase order for barriers for public safety purposes in connection with street closures. Approval recommended. Item 4, consideration of authorizing an amendment to the agreement for Confoster collection inventory and condition assessment services, which extends the agreement for an additional year. Approval recommended. Item 5, consideration of authorizing a purchase order for water meter reading nodes. Approval recommended. Item 6, consideration of authorizing an amendment to the agreement for auditing services to extend the agreement by 1 year. Approval recommended. And finally, item 7, consideration of scheduling a public hearing for August 12, 2024 regarding adoption of the 5-year comprehensive plan in support of the city's CDBG or Community Development Block Grant funding. Scheduled public hearing for August 12, 2024 recommended.
All right. Would any commissioner like an item removed from the consent calendar? Go ahead.
Items 3 and 7, please.
3 and 7. Any other items? Items 3 and 7 have been pulled. Would any member of the public like to pull any other item? Seeing none, I'll take a motion.
I move that we accept the consent calendar as amended.
Thank you, Commissioner Treadwell.
Support.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. All right, any further comment on this item? Public? Commission? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Okay, item number 3. Commissioner Warner, you had this pulled?
Yeah, I appreciate the city managers bringing forward, I'll say pedestrian safety as an issue, but my concern is that in isolation, how do we know this is the best place to invest $180,000 for pedestrian safety? We have a cherry festival going on right now, and I deliberately went down late this afternoon to look around, and I can see lots of vulnerable spots, which this doesn't address. And so how is this the best use of that money compared to other options? And I'd rather not get into specifics of vulnerable spots because that's probably best not held in a public venue, but this is a fine product. I looked into it, looked it up, fine product. But again, as a one-off, how do we know this is the best place to invest our money?
I would just put out there, and this was a conversation I had on, I think, Thursday or Friday with Mr. Bird, who is our emergency manager, as well as the chief of police. Everybody's always welcome to reach out to the chief if you'd like a tour of Command Central. What I will say, again, without going into too much, is our plan, where the weaknesses that you perceived, has been looked at and vetted, and is constantly monitored by MSP, TCPD, County Sheriff, FBI, and Homeland Security. So, while this is a request, we don't hold events lightly and just kind of catch all in how we set up safety, so.
All right, then I'll make the comment that for several years and prior to this city manager, I've encouraged the previous city manager to invest in granite blocks and place those between the parkway and the open space. They're attractive, they can stay there year-round, and they're a real barrier. Currently, there is no barrier. We put up essentially the equivalent of snow fencing down there between the parkway and tens of thousands of people. And yep, state police, sheriff's office, our police, they've all looked into it. There's no barrier. There's no real barrier down there. So to me, yeah, block a street off. We currently use vehicles, and that's fine. Is this more effective? Yes, probably, to somebody trying to deliberately cause harm. But if somebody's trying to deliberately cause harm, which has happened many times several years ago, it was a trend for a bit, especially in Europe, there's a lot bigger targets. So sorry that I brought it up, but if you're going to hide behind, well, that's what the experts say, then I'm going to bring up where the danger is.
I think that's fair to do. I would also say that sometimes when they're creating plans, and again, I would encourage you to reach out to the chief. I'm sure he'd be happy to give you a tour and some information, that there also sometimes need to be access for emergency as well that can be blocked sometimes with more permanent things. So would we like to make a motion on this, or are there any other questions?
I'll make the motion that the city manager be authorized to issue a purchase order to Meridian Rapid Defense Group Sales LLC of Pasadena, California for 16 mobile barriers and the related gate systems and trailer in an amount not to exceed $180,000 from capital projects account 245-245-970.000.
Thank you, Commissioner Stanley.
Support.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Is there any other comments on this item? Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, just final comment. It's nothing against staff. They bring forward ideas, but we have the responsibility to try to think in a bigger picture, and typically we don't. We just say, well, staff said it, so we're going to approve it, and that's what's happening again here. So it's not that, again, that I'm opposed to this. It's just we're looking at it in a vacuum, and we, as a body, don't have the critical thinking skills to make a good decision.
Go ahead, Heather.
Yeah, I have a question. So during high traffic seasons like now with the Cherry Festival, could these barriers be used, for example, where we have very, very thin sidewalks right up against like the Parkway, like in front of Del Mar, for example?
It's a good question. I would look at either Benjamin or Frank about the flexibility of where these are used when they're not being used for major events.
Frank Couturi, Director of Public Services. Could you elaborate a little bit more? I'm trying to understand the placement scenario that you're referring to.
Well, in front of Del Mar, to take that example, it's a narrow path. The TART is very narrow. It's right up against the actual Parkway or Front Street at that point. It looks like the base of these barriers is pretty narrow, and it could sit parallel to the curb. Could they be used as a barrier to traffic, or at least a visual barrier to traffic? For the
Barriers
pedestrians
to
and-
prevent, to increase safety from
Yes.
the motorway to the
Exactly.
pathway? I'm sure they can be used in a lot of different ways. They're not very wide, they're about 4 feet wide. They can be used in conjunction with each other by using a set of cables. So you could actually set these up 10, 20 feet apart and then cable them together so that they actually make a fence. I can't give you specifics on the location you're talking about. It would depend how much that application involves with the roadway surface. These will fit on the sidewalk, if that's your question. They're deployable by one person with sort of a hand truck. Basically, they lift right off, they come into place, and once they're in place, they really can't be moved without that tool again. So their application can be varied.
Well, it might be something to think about. It would certainly make it very visible, and it might send a message.
Yeah, that was a great question, Bob. Any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Commissioner Stanley.
So a question for you, Mr. Duturi. Have you received requests for more permanent barriers along the Parkway in front of the open space as Commissioner Werner was proposing? Has that been brought to you previously?
Barriers, no, though I'm familiar with the fencing that goes up every year. It doesn't constitute a barrier, but we're always requested to put up the fencing every year, which we do.
But
There have been,
But
sorry?
there's been no request for a permanent barrier in that location?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions from the commissioners? I will open up this item for public comment. Any public comment on this item?
I'll state the rules for public comment for the entire evening. Please state your name and address, indicate if you're a city resident, non-city resident, or city business owner. We've got a 3-minute time allotment. When your time has elapsed, the timer will beep. And of course, as always, we ask that all language be respectful to everyone. Thank you.
Justin Reed, 630 Cottage Drive, Permit 1B, Traverse City, Michigan, resident. So the granite barriers, that would take time and money. You're right, they can be more permanent year-round. But the issue and problem is that whenever you have the snow plows coming through there with the chunks of ice and everything else, that makes it more of a hazard. And also, if you're going to place granite blocks, then they have to be more strategic, and they have to have, you won't have to be able to put emergency public emergency services through that, you would have to figure out, you would still have to get those barriers that we're talking about, because even if you do the granite blocks, you still have to have some sort of movable barrier for emergency services. That's just not gonna, there's no way around that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
My name is Kia Avery, 674 Bay Hill Drive, Apartment 8, Traverse City, Michigan, 49684, and I'm a resident. What is the city's solution for helping the homeless?
I'm sorry, Kia, right now, this is just on this item about.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. It's public comment right now on this item. We will have a time for public comment in general later, and there might be some other items that this
Okay,
could work
I'm
into.
so sorry.
No, it's quite all right. Thank you for coming, and we definitely will make sure that you get your time. Sorry, and thank you for that clarification. Any other comments on this item? Thank you. Okay, no, you're fine, don't worry. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission. Are there any other comments or questions before we have a vote? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Anderson,
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw,
Yes.
Commissioner Stanley,
Yes.
Commissioner Treadwell,
Yes.
Commissioner Werner,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson,
Yes.
and Mayor Shamrow.
Yes, motion passes. Thank you. Okay, and we're moving on to item number 7 from the consent calendar that was pulled. This was about the CDBG, and Commissioner Warner, you had that pulled. What questions do you have?
Yeah, at the last meeting where this was an item on our agenda, I asked about, or expressed, because we were asked for our input, and I expressed interest in gathering input from those that would be eligible from the expenditure of these funds, and specifically, not exclusively, but especially people that already live in Traverse City. And what I intended with that was folks that are currently housed, not to the exclusion of the unhoused, but certainly folks that are housed, because we have quite the diversity of socioeconomic standing in our community, and there is a portion of our housed community that falls into categories that are eligible for CDBG funding. And rather than us and the stakeholders exclusively saying what's best to improve their lives, I was expressing my opinion that it would be great to have input from some of the folks already residing in our community. How could we use these funds potentially to help improve their lives? I sent that question to the city manager. Initial response from staff through the city manager was more targeted toward the unhoused, which I appreciate, and that's why I emphasized in my comments right now that I wasn't intending to only reach out to the unhoused, which is certainly valid, but to also reach out to, there's plenty of folks housed that would fall into this category under the CDBG. And so before moving forward with this, I'd love to hear plans to reach out to that portion of our population, if there are plans.
I would have to talk with our community partners to find those very specific individuals that you're looking for.
It's a broad category. It's not like, oh, there's only 5 of them in our community.
Okay.
Because can you remind us, please, what the, is it 80% and below of AMI?
For,
Do you
yes.
recall? For-
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, and so that it's not like this is only,
That's me.
it's only again, the unhoused or the destitute. There's plenty of folks in our community that fall into that category that are housed. They might own their own homes, they might be in an apartment, whatever it might be. And to me, there's value in hearing from those folks as well. And yes, there's a public hearing potentially being scheduled for August 12th, but then we're expected, it looks like, to approve the plan that same meeting because the deadline is August 16th. So even if there's not a plan to reach out to folks that I'm requesting, and somehow we get a portion of that community to show up at the August 12th meeting, then we're responsible for editing a plan at that meeting, wordsmithing it, whatever it might be, to approve it at that meeting. So it feels to me like we're already backed ourselves into a corner.
If I can ask a question, and was there, and we've talked about several plans recently, so I do apologize that some things are blurring together. Was there a element of outreach? Was it just going to be to our partners, or was there kind of like an online? And I ask that because, as Commissioner Treadwell just volunteered, not solely, we also have our partners who identify people who make use of services that would know that, but the 80% and below is often where we end up hitting with workforce and other things, and actually online can be a great way, pushing online can be a great way of getting people who might be busy working a few jobs and not be able to show up to a meeting on a Monday at 7 p.m. Go ahead, Commissioner Stanley.
There was an online survey, and I think it had fewer than 120 responses. I know I responded to it. It went out in the Bay Brief. It was promoted. And I guess my question, as always, is how much feedback is enough feedback? And, certainly I want to make sure that we are responding to the needs of our workforce and the folks who are getting squeezed out of the housing market but are at this moment housed. I also want to recognize that this is for a 5-year plan that is modifiable. Yes, I understand there's some heavy lifting involved with that, but this is our first attempt, and as I understand it, again, we are the first community in the state of Michigan in anyone's memory to be receiving these grants newly. And so I fully anticipate that there will be a need to make modifications, even though that may be a heavy lift, because we don't have a template to work from. Yes, there are communities that have done this in other parts of the United States, but again, how recently and with the particular dynamics that we are facing here, I don't know, and I don't know that staff have that answer either.
Yeah, the plan is modifiable. We're all learning together, even with our really very excellent staff with HUD. They're even saying we haven't had a new community enter into this in a very long time, so even those startup processes. But I will say that when I gave my sort of like list of things that I needed to get done in the first 6 months, and this was on that list, we initially had to have this done by May 15th. But because the congressional spending got delayed, we got accidentally 2 more months to do this. So the timeline was always going to be tight. I said that in January, but we risk losing out on this first year of funding. So our staff is trying to do everything that they can to receive that kind of feedback. And they've already made adjustments based on commission feedback on like those different priorities that were discovered through that process. And the commission said, hey, we'd like you to focus on these. And so those modifications are already happening. There's a draft. I will be happy to set up meetings with commissioners to review the draft before the public hearing period starts next week. So there's certainly ways to course correct as we go along. And yeah, if at any point in this first 5 years, we decide we want to go in a different direction, we can make that, the city commission can make that choice.
Great. Any other questions, or I would take a motion?
I'll make the motion that a public hearing regarding the adoption of a 5-year comprehensive plan in support of the city's CDBG fundings be scheduled for August 12th, 2024.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Shaw. Motion by Stanley, second by Shaw. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll be voting against this, both because of that being backed into a corner, that we will have to approve it the same August 12th as the public hearing, as well as I did make a request at the last time this item was on our agenda, and that request has not been met.
Good. Thank you, Commissioner Warner. Go ahead.
I will be voting in favor of it, but with the caveat that I have the same concerns as Commissioner Werner does about our dedication to gathering appropriate and using the results of our community input. And I will be looking during the next 30 days to be sure that we can reach out to the people who will be the beneficiaries of this HUD program. So I would love to follow up with the city manager and get more specifics about how we're going to accomplish that.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson.
And if I could speak to that, we are having another meeting with the Community Foundation on the subject of housing and homelessness on July 16th, and I can bring this up, and hopefully, and I can also speak with our planning director. I can get some direction on how to make sure that we're finding the right people to ask those questions.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions from the commission? Any public comment on this item? So this is about the CDBG, sorry, I said that very fast, public hearing scheduled for August 12th. Seeing,
Better explain what CBDG stands for
Community Development Block Grant Funding.
and its purpose. I just don't know if the layman really.
that's fair, very fair.
So I don't have, and maybe I could have this for our next meeting, like the elevator speech on what it is. Because of our MPO, we're now qualified for this type of funding that comes from HUD. It's been around for about 30 years, I believe. And the reason it's called a block grant is because it's based on census block data. And so, like, the data that the federal government gets every 10 years and it's meant to be used for individuals, usually seniors, and those struggling. And so there are very specific rules on how the money can be spent, percentages that can be used on soft versus hard costs and services. So our team, our staff are trying to put together a program that's meaningful, that follows the rules, and that can make a difference in Traverse City.
All right. Any other questions from the commission? And just actually, because I didn't make it clear, any last call for public comment? Go ahead.
Justin Reed, 630 Cottage Drive, Apartment 1B, city resident. So if this benefits Traverse City, what are the minuses with this program? I mean, I don't see on how the city can be back in the corner if it's something that helps people who are homeless and also folks who are struggling to pay rent. So it'd be nice to see what minuses there are whenever the public hearing becomes. So thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Any other public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission. Any last comments? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Shaw,
Yes.
Commissioner Stanley,
Yep.
Commissioner Treadwell,
Yes.
Commissioner Werner,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
and Mayor Shamrow.
Yes, motion passes. And I look forward to seeing that final presentation in a month plus. Okay, we'll move on now to our old business discussion of social districts. I'll let you tee this up, Liz.
Thank you. We had a study session on the subject on April 29th. We received feedback from the commission that the social district was a little too large to come back with some other options. It gave us some time to explain what this is all about. And so the planning director's here, and you've been presented with 2 other options. You could certainly modify those options if you would like as a commission to keep this moving. It does not require 5 votes. The total cost for the amenities is $60,000, but the actual vendors where we're getting like tables, chairs, and things are within my spending authority. So I apologize for the confusion there. But at this time, Mr. Winter is here to take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Sean Winter, City Planning Director. So as City Manager Vogel mentioned, we were here in April discussing the East End Placemaking Project, which was born out of the Mobility Action Plan. As that was being worked on, we were approached by businesses in that location that were interested in establishing a social district. So we brought that to you. We got feedback specifically on the social district component in the map. So I took notes on the map. The map that you see in front of you is the one that was presented in April. I then had my staff listen to it the next day to have fresh ears on the comments, and we reconciled our notes and then therefore modified the maps accordingly. So this is the map that you were shown Again, we were taking a planning perspective as, yes, it extends beyond the places that are licensed today, but with the idea that more places may come in. Plus, we had expressed support from businesses on the west side of 8th Street, specifically the NOMI Collective, as well as the dentist office down south on Garfield that wanted to be included in this, even though they weren't licensed establishments, but they wanted to be part of that branding and that placemaking. So the next map you see, option 2, shrinks the footprint of the boundaries and the common area. So there's two elements to a social district. There's the boundary that includes the entirety of the parcels that are within there, so we're not trying to bisect any of the parcels. And the common area where, again, the people could consume beverages purchased from a licensed establishment within those districts. In this first map, we were trying to indicate the public right away, but a social district doesn't mean you can walk into 8th Street with a drink. It was intended for the sidewalk, but that created some confusion, so we therefore narrowed it. So based on this map, when you go from the first one, we eliminated the west side of Michigan and Walnut altogether. We eliminated the social district from going along South Civic Center Drive, as well as the east side of Hastings as it moves south of Garfield. And we brought it in from the west so that those stubs of Lincoln and I believe it is Boyd are no longer included. The idea was that those corner parcels, all of their frontage would be eligible, but we kept it just to Garfield. So here's option 2, a variation from what you saw back in April. And then we shrunk it even further with option 3, stopping at Lincoln Street instead of going down towards Boyd. And then, again, keeping it primarily focused along 8th Street and Garfield, where we have those establishments. We did have a lot of support from the individual in NOMI Collective, who is located right here, who owns this building and is also looking for additional tenants. It does have a commercial kitchen in there, so the idea of being part of a social district is very important to her because that helps with getting tenants and what options they may have in the future. There was concerns on the other side of Michigan about those residential structures. It was pointed out that they're all short-term rentals. The owner of NOMI Collective, in fact, owns 2 of them. So most of the time, she says, during the week and in the winter months, there's no one in those houses at all, unfortunately. So with that, this is before you. I'll turn it back over for discussion. I'm available to have Q&A if you would like. And then we'll go from there.
And just to clarify, because this is up on the map for the public watching at home and here, so the pink is the proposed district, but the common space is actually where the yellow hashes are, correct?
Correct, yeah. So and again, the boundary of the district follows parcel lines, so you have to be within the boundary and then fronting that common area to be able to participate.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Stanley?
So my first question for you is, if we were to adopt the most conservative, smallest footprint possible for the social district, what would the process be for down the road if another property owner or business owner wanted to join for amending that or expanding it? And are there criteria that were put in place around this, or could there be criteria for assessing the social district and its impact up to that point before making a decision?
Yeah, so amending the boundary itself would be the same process that we're going through now, and then it gets submitted to the MLCC, and then they have to approve it on their own, as well as the individual applicants. So yeah, that would be similar to what we're discussing here tonight. And your second question, I'm sorry.
My second question was, if we're going to adopt a smaller footprint than what was originally proposed, has there been discussion of, or could there be some kind of a rubric for assessing the impacts of the social districts, positive in terms of economic development and negative in terms of disorderly conduct or calls to dispatch, things of that nature, that would be helpful data to have when assessing whether or not, if something is approved, if it's even very small, if it were to expand in the future, what we would want to be looking at?
Yeah, and so we've been meeting with the property owners, and we have committed to them that once the season is over, pulling everyone together again, having discussion, was that worth it, was it not? This ends October 31st, so there is a natural stop point. We're a lot later in the year than I think a lot of people had been hoping for. That's just how these things work, so we may not have a full picture, but yeah, we'd be talking with police and DPS and just to understand better if there were any problems with it. And I do want to iterate again, if there are problems at any point, the city commission can pull this whole thing. They just have to hold a public hearing, that's it. and then it's done.
So my request would be, and I would encourage staff, if something is approved, of some form of a social district is approved, to come up with or bring to the city commission some sort of standard areas of where we would be wanting to see some hard and fast data and metrics to be able to assess, even though this wouldn't be, if it were approved this time around, for a full season of worth of data, but something where we can really have some very specific details, and perhaps this body could give feedback about what those things might be if something is approved.
Yeah, we'd love to be able to do that, because we were already intending on kind of doing this evaluation, so we can share that. It would be probably before the end of the year, since it starts or ends at the end of October, and we would start working with those businesses and all the entities at that time. Yeah, because it'd be a lot like 8th Street, not a social district, but an investment, a change, and then we tracked, okay, how many dollars of new investment came in, how many new dwelling units, things of that nature that we can report on. So we would want to do the same on this.
Go ahead, Heather.
Yeah, I would really like to support the placemaking in this area for the businesses that have invested in creating a commercial and community center for the surrounding neighborhoods, and to show that the city encourages commercial and community hubs along our corridors. I'd like to quote from a resident who wrote to me today, Jeff Kreideser, who supports the social district, because I can't say it better than he does, that for locals, it would be helpful, he says, to add more identity to our neighborhoods where adults can build bonds with neighbors and kids and see their peers from school. All help lead to a healthier civic community and more attractive neighborhoods to call home. I thought that was really great. Yes, alcohol is a component of this, but that's a choice. It can also be coffee. We have a bakery there, coffee and rolls, and you can bring your dogs and your kids. But I still think that even option 3 is too big, and I would really like to see the social district reduced to just the businesses on the north and south side of East 8th along the service drives and their parking lots. And that the commons area would only occur in that public space in front of those businesses on either side of 8th. I think that will reduce signage confusion, will reduce people wandering off into parking lots. The placemaking can occur along those service drives as well, which also facilitates keeping that commons area very visibly bordered. It will look really nice. It'll be smaller, but this is a pilot, and pilots can start small, and it sounds like we can increase this if we need to. The tactical urbanism portion that was in the presentation, I think that's really important too, in the form of safety enhancements on that to cross 8th Street there at the Garfield light. It's not terrible. There are worse places to cross in Traverse City, but it could be better with something clever and colorful. Again, pilots by definition are small. I think I would support trying this, and if it's successful, it can grow. And we are always investing in our downtown, always endless investment in our downtown. We don't give businesses that are trying to make commercial community hubs along our corridors any money that I know of, and this is our chance to support those efforts.
Commissioner Shaw?
So that's my proposal, option 4.
And we can totally do that. It's up to this board, wherever you want the map boundaries, but I would only ask that you tell me today, so I'm not, because this is now my second time doing this, where I'm hearing from individuals and having to go back and have my staff listen to it, and we're trying to hobble it together. So if we could have consensus from this board of where they want this boundary, then that would make things a lot easier for us.
Commissioner Warner, you had raised your hand, and then
Yeah,
Commissioner
and I had sent an email earlier today, I spoke by telephone to city attorney, and we agreed that we would hear from the city clerk, because he would know best, and that is about the current, I know this is our next agenda item, but it's tied closely to this. So the current liquor licenses for Tank Space and Oakwood Burger, do either or both of those currently, the liquor licenses, allow a customer to purchase a beverage and either opened or closed, exit the building with the alcoholic beverage?
Yes, both Tank Space and, Earth and Ales, which is Tank Space, does not currently have a license that would allow them to sell takeout.
Okay.
Excuse me, with the exception that, and this probably isn't what you're getting at, but just so I'm clear, they can sell to manufacturers for, of course.
Oh, yeah, that's
right? But you're talking about an individual customer.
Right, because part of where I'm going with this is the social district as an actual, like, construct from the state the only way to get to our endpoint, or is there another way to that same endpoint by just having the city invest in the service drives, and then anybody that's selling alcohol and currently is allowed to have customers walk out the door with it, they go to those picnic tables and they use it. But it sounds like one at least does not.
Tank
so
Space
this is a
does
different
not.
thing. Okay.
Correct.
So that
Whereas
that
Oakwood
addresses that.
Oakwood Burger does.
Okay, because that's part of it, and I know it was touched on and explained well at the last meeting, but by creating a social district, we're also keeping out others that aren't, not that that's a bad thing, that's just the result of it. So it was removed from the agenda, but Brick Wheels will potentially now have a liquor license, and they can sell things to go, so somebody could buy those. And without a social district, they could come to these new picnic tables and have their picnic there. But now it's a social district, and they will not be able, you can only consume alcohol that's purchased by folks in the social district. So it's technical, it's whatever, and it's not good and it's not bad, it's just different. But I just wanted to make sure that's why I was asking the question, and I'm actually quite a bit in favor of what was previously mentioned as far as shrinking it down, because to me, it's those two service drives. That's the space. I mean, that's where the city's making the investment. And yeah, we could call it a bigger social district, but if it's really just a pilot, to what end? So, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Anderson, you had your hand up next?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to begin with a thank you to Commissioner Shaw, who was the first person that I think pointed out that we really have two proposals baked into a single one here. First, the proposal for a social district, and second, a proposal for placemaking to make that area a more attractive place for people to visit or play or just enjoy. However, they're being treated as a unit in the document before us, even though they're rather different ideas. When I look at the social district, I'm aware that Michigan law permitting social districts was a pandemic-era law that went into effect July 2020, so that businesses could comply with social distancing regulations, but keep their doors open. Now that we're post-pandemic, I think social districts across the state have really been repurposed, and with the goal of combining on-site liquor sales with off-site consumption. There are dozens of them, of course, across Michigan, but even in a community as small as Tecumseh down in southeast Michigan, their population is 8,600. They have 11 liquor license holders in their social district. So I'm not aware of any precedents for establishing a social district that is quite this tiny. And the profile of a typical social district in the state looks a lot more like our Front Street looks, frankly. So I'm trying to keep that perspective in mind. Thinking about placemaking, the feedback that we received in April and since then has been lots of folks have strong opinions about it, and I'm happy to hear both sides. What we heard in April was that, yes, particularly local residents in the neighborhood would like to see the city invest in some amenities for their neighborhood, but they also question why it needs to be alcohol-driven. they've expressed interest in a place to gather, for families to be together outdoors, for a person to sit down with a cup of coffee. I've received feedback from businesses who don't have liquor licenses, and some of them say that no one has talked to me about this, although they may have very well been invited I really don't want to be responsible for caring for neighborhood amenities, clearing tables and watering flowers. So I would be very open to the idea of separating placemaking from the social district. Just as an example, on 8th Street, about a half a block west of Garfield, there's a third of an acre lot for sale. It's graded and ready for mixed-use development, but right now it's empty and there's a big for sale sign there. It's not only less than a block away from the businesses that are seeking the social district approval, but it's also close to Rounds Restaurant, to the Cuts Hair Salon, the Nomi Collective Boutique, the J-Lube, Potter's Bakery, Family Fair. It's a great location for placemaking. And, you know, would it be feasible to arrange a pilot, a short-term lease of that lot, have our seating and tables and bike racks, in essence, create a pop-up park rather than a social district that is dependent upon alcohol delivery. We could then put the concept of a social district back into the hands of the two businesses who applied to participate. There's already an outdoor service area between their two buildings. There seem to be relatively lightly used paved parking on the south and the west sides of their buildings. These are successful and savvy business people, and I would question whether our placemaking really needs to be limited to supporting those two businesses. So I would like to encourage the commissioners to consider a different approach to placemaking and to return this proposal to the planning department for further evaluation.
Just a clarification point, though, the placemaking that we're discussing here would be in the public right-of-way that the city owns. The place you're talking about is privately owned business, so that is where that would be that's a distinction that we can't cross.
It would require a short-term lease of a vacant lot that's on, I mean, this is a pilot, so lease it for 3 months.
I would also check, because I know that they've been allowing that parking use for commonplace there. I'm not sure that it's actually vacant at this point and not already leased. So just throwing that out there as people ask questions. It's not necessarily that we would not be asking or investigating, but I'm just letting people know that the difference is out there.
I think based on feedback from both businesses and neighborhood residents that there's some value there, that certainly that side of the city has been underrepresented in terms of amenities, placemaking, and even park space. You know, there's the city park. I don't know. The closest city park might be F&M.
Hull.
Pardon me?
Hull.
Oh, Hull. Yes, thank you. So, but in terms of activating this small commercial district, I wonder if a pop-up park might be a completely different approach that would have many of the same benefits.
Commissioner Treble actually has his hand up, and then I see Commissioner
Yes.
Stanley.
Going on to previous comments about the choice, or one of the choices between us, if we have 3 options, I feel that we've, both as a public body and the applicants have invested, and our planning department has invested quite a bit of time and effort into this, and based on social districts that I've been in other parts of the state and in communities that I've read about but haven't been to, it seems to be a piece of legislation that, yes, it was for a specific situation in the pandemic, but it's something that worked very well then and got a lot of people thinking, why did we not allow this to happen in the first place? Compared to a lot of those other towns, our downtown already has a fairly thriving culture, but it does provide a great tool to use both the social district creation and this revitalization by improving the public aspects of it to help breathe new life into an area that sees tens of thousands of cars but doesn't see the same level of economic activity as our downtown. I'd be in favor of getting this going forward, and if option 3, the most conservative option, is one that can get some support, then it allows us to definitely try that, see what concerns emerge, what benefits are realized, and look at expansion in the future. Ultimately, I agree with Director Winter that we shouldn't be foisting a bunch of differing opinions on the planning department. We need to come to some consensus now. So I'd want to move forward with whatever we can agree on, but I'd be interested in looking at if you couldn't include the 2 parcels on the southwest corner of Garfield and 8th, which is RVR, it's an auto repair shop right now, and a vacant lot to the south. Just because that, I see it as making a little more squared off district. And yes, the yellow on the map is the public social zones, but one of the benefits of a social district is it allows private businesses to essentially also create their shared space, whether it's putting out some tables, putting some canopy tents out, or something else. So I can see a future in which an auto repair shop where people might be getting something done for a half an hour or so might want to go across the street, get a sandwich, and then sit down on a grassy lawn and eat it.
Thank you, Commissioner Treadwell. Commissioner Stanley, you had your hand up?
So I have a question, I think probably for the city manager. So you noted previously that while the total for the placemaking elements was $60,000, that per vendor, it is within your purchase power. So my question, I suppose, is if this body fails to approve of the social district, any of the maps or any amendments to a map this evening, would it still be within the city manager's purview to exercise your purchase power for those placemaking elements, particularly along the service drives for those businesses?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Sorry, I was just thinking about the shifts there. So I have a question for going back way to Commissioner Shaw's original proposal for the 4th proposal. I think I like what you're saying there. I did want to ask, though, Know Me Collective has been interested in this since the beginning. Would you be at all interested in your 4, including their 8th Street and Garfield facing right-of-way as part of 4? And then the kind of service space on the east side of 8th Street, like you also spoke about.
Yeah, I did think about that at first. There isn't anything really happening at NOMI right now, but the biggest problem I see is getting across Garfield and carrying beverages, because I believe you're not supposed to sip, but you can carry. Isn't that, when you're in the common, you can walk, but if you're actually crossing the street, you can't sip. At least that's how it works in in Grand Haven. You're not allowed to sip when you cross the street, but you can cross the street with your cup.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen that in any of the information that the state's put out. That might be a Grand Haven specific rule. So yeah, I mean, most people would probably.
So you'd be okay with people crossing Garfield sipping?
If they feel confident doing it, that's their decision. I mean, most people are going to pay attention to what they're doing. Again, this isn't suddenly a scene of debauchery with people roaming around streets. It's still people typically acting in a normal fashion. I would point out now, I mean, we have these licensed establishments there. People come to this location to consume and then they leave. Most of these places close quite early. 2 of the 3 establishments don't even sell liquor. You know, it's very different. I want to go to the question or the comment that was made earlier about downtown. This isn't an either-or situation. If you think a social district's great downtown, that can be done as well. But these are the people that approached us, and that's why we're bringing it to you, and we've been working with them.
But to get back, I feel like we need some really detailed plans about how you intend to make it safe for people to cross Garfield on the north side, for me to support people walking down that street.
That's fair. That was your proposal, and that's absolutely fair. I mean, I see a business that asked us to be a part of this, and I know has been looking for ways to be more active in the evenings and do special events. And so I would hesitate maybe to support something that would leave them out at this time, though.
Except that there's nothing there right now, and they could certainly be involved next year when they get everything put together.
I would add, though, this, you know, from what I'm hearing from them, having it established makes it much easier to attract a tenant than saying maybe, you know, like maybe the city commission will approve it. You know, we got the RVR, I think you mentioned, and that vacant lot. If you notice around town where people tend to be, then you start to see other things pop up, like behind Elevate on the trail, there's 2 food trucks. Same thing behind the Elks Lodge, where a lot of people walked across Division. So again, I'm just saying that to keep in mind, like, if you want this for true economic development, and again, we can shrink the map whatever you want, but be mindful of opportunity that could come as opposed to just what's on the ground today.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson, you had your hand up.
Yeah, so with that in mind, it was, you know, these were the only businesses that originally like brought it up, and then some other businesses were either approached or they just heard of it and jumped on board.
Yep, so
but-
we started, once we were approached, hand drawing some maps
Yeah,
more similar to
yeah.
this, and then I sent Katie in our office with an
Gotcha.
invite and knocked
But
on every business
what
door
I'm,
in
what I'm
there.
getting at in response to Commissioner Anderson's comments is, if these districts have been bigger elsewhere,
Oh, yeah.
like, was there any consideration of that, and like, maybe, like, why not all the way down to Rose Street?
Well,
Or
to be perfectly honest with, and this goes back to the idea of downtown too, and it comes to the healthier drinking culture. We thought the best thing was to start small, start in an area where it's truly being used as an economic development tool where that's needed, as opposed to a thriving area. So we were just trying to be cautious with the commission on what you guys would support. So, yeah, I mean, it could, if you go to Grand Rapids, it's most of their entire urban downtown area is one social district, so.
Thank you. Go ahead, Commissioner Anderson.
May I ask, who actually owns those service drives on the north and south sides of 8th Street? I seem to recall, just as a neighbor, hearing controversies over maintenance of those service drives and whether the city was responsible or the property owners were responsible. And I don't know where things came out there.
The city is responsible. The service drives are placed there by the city, or were placed there by the city under a highway easement that the city owns on either side of 8th Street. So the underlying property is owned by the adjacent property owners. I'm speaking generally. I haven't looked at the title work for each and every property, but there's a highway easement over that property. So they are the city's service drives. That's the short answer.
Great, okay, that helps to clarify. And then in terms of your anticipated use of those service drives, could you explain, would there be furniture placed there? There would be pedestrian access? What will happen in the service drives?
Yeah, so back in your April packet, we have the renderings of it that we demonstrated that, as well as a spec sheet with what is planned to be purchased. So very large concrete planters will be purchased to close off vehicular access. These are the ones, and again, everything we purchased, we worked with the Parks and Rec department. So if you guys decide that you don't want to do this, then this money will not be for waste. It's all the products they use in the park, so they would just be repurposed. So they're the same planters you'll see at East Bay Park by the bathroom, those big concrete ones. So those will be used to close off the vehicular traffic. We're proposing 12 picnic tables, again, the same ones in the parks. with solar umbrellas for each one, so they provide shade, but they also have a solar panel at the top center, and the arms are actually LED solar lights. So each one will have that, as well as a base. We proposed also purchasing some galvanized planters to put along the median, just to kind of make it look a little nicer. And I think that's really about, I think we had some trash cans in there,
It is in
bike
the-
rack.
It is in the packet.
Yeah, I know I put it in the April packet.
No,
So
it's in this
Oh, it's in this
packet.
one, yeah, we
Yep.
put it in there too. So that, all that information is in there of what we plan on purchasing for there. I know the owners of Oakwood took it upon themselves to plant flowers in the median. Prout, when we met with them, I think it was last week, they asked if they could do the same, and we weren't opposed to that. So, yeah, just a all-around team effort to try to beautify that area.
Okay, so the treatments would be identical, both north and south side.
I'd be cautious to say identical, because once purchased, we put together a schematic to show you what it could look like. We committed to the business and property owners when we were there that we'd work with them on the actual placement of each table. So identical, it might be 7 tables on one side, 5 on the other, or something like that. But the idea is to make it a cohesive aesthetic through there.
And just to clarify, the entrance into Prout's parking off of 8th Street will be blocked by the concrete planters?
Nope.
It will not?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope, because that's an actual alley right there. So if you go back to that rendering, it shows the planters on either side. So you can pull in and park in the Common Goods parking lot or Prout's, but you wouldn't be able to turn down the service drive.
Thank you.
Because they have a curb cut through that median there. Same on the east side of Eastfield Laundry. That is actually an alley too, so that would be blocked off at the east end of the service drive, but you still pull in the alley to pull behind the businesses or continue further down. So,
And will there be anything done to improve the pedestrian safety and pavement quality within those service drive areas?
yeah, so we would have to work with DPS to get them out there and patch some of the holes. I went out there again today. It was on site looking at where they are. As I think Leslie mentioned at the last meeting, the pavement has gotten so bad that they couldn't cape seal it when they did the cape sealing a few years ago. But we're at that point now where both Garfield and 8th Street are in the mobility action plan for planned improvements, which would likely use some of that space. So we're going to start looking at what that's going to look like to redesign that. And I know that's the interest of the property owners too, is a longer term, more permanent improvement, but this is the first step in getting there.
And in the case of any slip and falls or any actions as a result of pedestrian issues in that area, is the city responsible? Are the businesses responsible?
I think the short answer is that probably if somebody were to trip and fall in there, everybody will end up being in the lawsuit, including the property owners. That's the case now. I don't say that to be snarky. And then it comes out in the wash during the lawsuit typically. It's the city's right-of-way easement. It's the city, it currently is. It's the city's service drive currently. And so it would have to be sorted out whether governmental immunity would apply when it's being used for that use.
And I would probably add that if there is a liability issue, it's going to exist with or without the social district, because it's not closed to public. People are using it, they're parking, they're walking in it today. So if that's a concern, then regardless of the social district, it should probably be addressed.
Commissioner Shaw?
So to talk about the placemaking, the picnic tables and stuff like that, if you're looking at the option 4 with the extension that goes down to Nomi, with some kind of really creative safety enhancements on that crossing there. Another concern I have is the signage is really clear about, how, you're walking like a half a block to get down to Nomi from the intersection there. It has to be really clear that you're not invited to head off into a parking lot or something like that. So it's more expensive because you have to have more signage to go that extra half block. And then what about the placemaking down in Nomi? There no picnic tables, no planters down there?
No, you're correct. No, there's not, because we don't have the space like we do with the service drives. That's why we're utilizing that. Now, they could do something on their own property and invite people down, of course, but we can't place stuff on their property, and it's very narrow, which is again why the city started acquiring those easements in the 50s and late 40s, is to widen that. So going back to this first map, Heather, every one of those green squares is where we would put a sign. So any place where someone would be walking out of the district is where a sign would be placed to say, you know, you can't leave here with your beverage or anything like that.
You can't get off the sidewalk. You can't get off the sidewalk, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it does make it, it doesn't exactly brand it in the same way as just using those two service drives. I mean, that would be very branded. Here is this new, you know, community hub for everybody to visit with flowers and picnic tables. When it stretches down that half block, that dilutes that. Just something to think about as well for this first, you know, couple of months of a pilot.
Commissioner Warner?
Yeah, we've received a few emails since April about the disposable cups and just how do we as a community take care of that. And so I would toss out for consideration aluminum cups. There are 100% aluminum cups. My daughter came home from college with a few from concert venues and such, and they're much more recyclable than red Solo cups or the equivalent, and much more likely to actually be recycled by recycling companies. So whether we can require that, encourage it, whatever it might be, but 100% aluminum cups would be fantastic.
Both, I talked to both people just before the meeting because of the emails that have been coming through, and both are already do not use single-use plastics and would be using compostable cups.
And in the
Yeah,
case
most
of,
compostable cups aren't actually compostable, so I'll just leave that.
So that we can they're here, both are here to answer questions and
and I know in
discuss
the
if we have them.
case of Oakwood, they don't use cups, period. They just use cans. And so,
Fantastic. I
so
like
their
cans.
plan is to put the label on the can, and that's permissible. So we will be printing the labels, and then they can get them from us. We're not trying to, it's up to you guys, but as the planning department, we're not trying to dictate which vessel that they serve in. I mean, that's one issue with Common Good, is they serve wine that people like in glass, so their logistics are trying to figure out what type of glass, or what type of vessel they would use for that type of beverage. So again, that's a decision for them that we haven't meddled with, but you guys could.
Go ahead, Heather.
Yeah, and I would encourage using whatever vessel it happens to be, something that disintegrates quickly, because if you've got an aluminum cup, you could just walk around and fill that thing up. You could fill it up in your house and walk over, so, and that's strictly not permitted in the social district, so.
Well, first of all, are there any other questions right now? Okay, we do have, we'll say there's 4 options now out there. Commissioner Shaw proposed a 4th one. We have a motion. What I would guess I would be happy to read, because it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lauren or Benjamin, we cut off the second half. We just need to do the management plan.
Technically,
First
yes.
part, okay.
yes.
So if someone wants to make a motion for which plan they would prefer, we can start there. Mark,
Like
sorry,
number
Mark,
2.
just, what?
How would the motion be crafted?
So
in
basically, you
favor
could
of
start the
number
motion that's in there, but stop after includes adopt a management plan for said social district. So right before the and.
So I
Right up to
understand, are you talking about just the management plan, not the map right now? Or both?
This is both.
This would be both.
Okay, 'cause
Yeah,
there
yeah.
is a
So it would have
separate
the
document
option in
called the
it.
management
So it's
plan.
option and the management plan is in the motion, but
Yeah.
the funding falls under the city manager's purview, so we don't actually have to make that part of the motion.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yes, so, sorry, Commissioner, or Pro Tem
So is this
Wilson.
just for movement, because I don't want to like straw poll everybody, right?
Right, yes, yes,
Um,
absolutely,
If I
don't
was
struggle.
going to go for 3,
Okay,
I don't see a difference in 2, so I move that the city commission supports the East Side Placemaking Project and approve a resolution establishing the social district to include option 2, which includes adopting the management plan for said social district.
okay. Who goes down? So that's one that goes all the way down to Boyd. That's one you wanted to make, or did you want to do the third one that
Well,
was tightened
That's
up?
the one I mean, it's only on the one side of the street, correct? Oh, no, it does run down.
Yeah.
I was just looking out for those businesses down there. I'm fine with 2.
2 or
Nobody
3?
supports it, it's okay, but,
So 2, you said?
yeah.
Okay, do we have a second for 2?
I'll second that for purpose of discussion.
Okay, so we've got a motion by Pro Tem, second by Commissioner Treadwell. Okay, so 2 has been proposed. Would we like to talk about 2 specifically at the end? We can vote up or down, and then another one could be proposed if it doesn't pass, or this will be the one that we'll choose to go with.
And I'm just trying to get movement.
Sure, absolutely.
And
That's,
I see that the bulk of it stays away from most residents. It doesn't drift into the neighborhoods. So tightening it up half a block didn't really make much of a difference to me. but-
okay. Go ahead, Commissioner Warner.
Yeah, I like what Commissioner Shaw put forward as option 4, just that idea of this is the place, because that's what people will see, that we see these maps. We have these maps in our heads now, but, and they'll be posted and whatnot, but the public improvements are to those service drives, and maybe those service drives plus down toward Nomi, but that's the place, and because it is a pilot, to me, it makes a lot of sense from a marketing standpoint to say, this is what we're doing for now. Let's see how it goes. Let's get the feedback, and move from there.
Sure, so you're not supportive of 2, but you could be supportive of 4.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on this one?
On 2?
On 2, yep. Okay. All right, then I will open it up right now for public comment. So this would be on the social district using map 2. If anybody would like to make any comments. Public comment time, sorry.
Good evening. Andrew Kidwell Bricks, 430 West 16th Street, city resident and co-owner of Tank Space on 8th and Earth and Ales. I want to thank staff for all the time that they've put into this, both originally and addressing comments and concerns that were raised back in April. I just want to support more generally, whether it's option 2, 3, or 4. I think a social district on 8th Street with or without Garfield on the east side of Traverse City will breathe more life into that side of town, will, I think, ultimately calm traffic on 8th Street, will encourage new investment if the district allows for it. And I think ultimately at the end of the day, what it's going to look like is a lot like the sidewalk cafes that we see downtown. I think it's been shown in 100-plus communities across the state that these work, that they're safe, that they're functional. And I think activating that street and putting that activity out in front of these businesses, in front of us, in front of Common Good, in front of Prout perhaps, gives us a place, gives us a destination that's something more than the sum of its parts. I think people are going to see that activity. They're going to want to be a part of it. Whatever the specifics end up being, I think we're going to be happy that we did it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Any other comments on this item?
Good evening. My name is Matt Tharp. I live at 1020 Washington Street, and I'm a permanent resident of Traverse City. I'd like to say up front that I'm very supportive of the idea of the social district. I'm supportive of the businesses that are there, and I have no concerns about their ability to operate safely and effective in the 8th Street corridor. Although I am concerned about what I would perceive as a lack of planning on the part of the city as for how do we make this corridor safe for the folks that are there and the folks that are transiting. At the last meeting, a number of items were addressed by the public and the businesses. It looks like the COAs that have been presented tonight addressed the business side of it, but not necessarily the surrounding areas for businesses and the folks that use the 8th Street corridor for transportation. I view the social district as a partnership between the community and the businesses that are there. And if we're going to do this, it should be well-researched, well-defined, so that it can be a good experience for all the folks that will be visiting or transiting. I would ask the commission to consider the following items that haven't been discussed, at least publicly, in the memo or earlier tonight by the Planning Commission. For example, we're removing parking spots to the lots of the access road, but there's no mention or plan to how we'd reconstitute those parking spots. or actually how many parking spots are needed. In conversations with local businesses, we could easily determine the rough number of spots that we needed, how many the businesses currently have today, and how many of that would lead to an excess parking, most likely in the neighborhoods around it. I think most neighbors would be okay with that if they understood what the impacts were. We were fully transparent with them as to how many spots would be there and what does that look like. As long as the lines of safety precautions for the guests of businesses, currently 8th Street has a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit west of Garfield and a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit east of Garfield. I would ask the assessment to be done to, perhaps lowering the speed limit. Anyone who's been on 8th Street knows it's more like the Audubon than it is downtown with folks that transit those areas. And I would consider the 8th Street and Garfield a pretty gnarly intersection for folks that are trying to transit on foot or bike in those areas. By comparison, the downtown area is all 25-mile-an-hour speed limits. There's crosswalks halfway down each of those blocks, and the infrastructure in place limits the ability to get to higher speeds in that area. The light at Garfield and 8th is also not programmed. It runs the same cycle. The light left-hand green arrow is coming on whether there's cars there or not. There should be some consideration to triggering a shorter cycle, 1 second delay for red light runners so we don't hit the pedestrians, because I think the expectation is folks are going to transit between the businesses, which is what we want. If we don't, then we wouldn't need a social district. Additionally, behind Common Good, you've got an alleyway that's dirt. If that was paved and turned into additional parking, that would keep some of the parking off of your other side streets. They would potentially enhance the visiting experience for folks that are coming to the businesses and take a look at those items. At the end of the day, I would say, again, I'm supportive of the social districts. I think the COA, as presented to the commission tonight, are all very good ideas.
Mr. Thorpe, thank you for your comments. Your time's elapsed.
Thank you very much.
Judy Nelson, 429 Garfield Avenue. Option 2 to me is a non-starter. Option 3 is better, but it needs to still be reduced. I like the idea of option 4. I really think that limiting the area to the service drives provides a better placemaking and better common area for everybody. It's a pilot. Start small. You can always expand it. That's where the businesses that are participating in this social district are. And it's the only place where you're going to provide benches and lighting and trash receptacles and whatever. It simplifies the signage so it's less confusing. And for safety, you don't have people that are imbibing and crossing Garfield. And I'm going to expand on that a little bit. As you may or may not know, I am on the north side of 8th Street in the first block. I have the only driveway that backs onto Garfield. And I get a great view all the time of people running the red light on Garfield in either direction, north or south. And I can tell you, actually, when I came to the meeting tonight, before 7 o'clock, there were no cars on Garfield. You all don't think of it that way, but there were no cars. And I see people who start south of 8th Street, gun their engines, and go all the way to Oak Park as fast as they can at 7, 8 o'clock at night. And you're going to have people socializing and crossing the street. Mayor Shamro, the reason I didn't include Nomi in my preferred option was because I'm worried about the safety of those people. That intersection is not very safe, so I'll leave it at that. Also, let me ask the question, healthy drinking culture. Why is it that we always have to develop placemaking or whatever we're doing and build it around alcohol? What happened to the recommendations in the healthy drinking culture strategic plan? Where are they, and what are we doing about them? The city has a reputation as a party city. We're driving away families and retirees. Is that really what we want? I'm not so sure. So I like option 4. I'll leave it to you whether you include Nomi, but I just told you why I didn't, because I get a great view.
Ms. Nelson, your
Okay.
time for comments have elapsed.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you.
Justin Reed, Traverse City resident. So just to reiterate, that the 8th and Garfield intersection is dangerous. That's because it's an antique stoplight there. There would be some major infrastructure upgrades that would have to happen at the intersection. And also not farther down the road, the Churchill intersection right there where it crosses, that's a dangerous intersection right there too. So, I mean, if we're talking about upgrades, I think a comprehensive study on upgrading the light on Garfield and 8th and also where the Churchill crosses. And also to the comment about the speed limit. Traverse City does not regulate the speed limit. That is something that the Michigan State Police do. The Michigan Police do a speed study in the corridor, and they go ahead and they use a formula to determine that speed limit. And also for the pop-up park, I mean, even though the Civic Center is not a city park, it's a Grand Traverse County park, it still exists. So, you know, it's kind of frivolous to go out and do a pop-up park over not too far from the Civic Center. So thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Any other public comment on this item? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Bob Downs from 1037 Washington Street. And I guess my primary concern would be spillover into the residential area with parking. Because when we've seen State Street with the popularity of Little Fleet and other bars and such along that route, it's just jammed with cars now. And it's blighted that whole neighborhood. I would also strongly agree that that's a very dangerous intersection, and my recommendation would be to put a traffic camera in there and start issuing tickets, because that word would get around pretty fast. That's all.
Thank you, Bob. All right, any other public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission. Any final comments? So this is on two. We can either vote it up or do another motion after, so this is not the final. So all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Stanley?
Yes.
Commissioner Treadwell?
Yes.
Commissioner Werner?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
No.
Commissioner Shaw?
No.
And Mayor Shamrow?
No.
Motion
Okay,
fails.
that motion fails. So when Mayor Pro Tem Wilson raised his hand, Commissioner Shaw raised after, so I'm going to call on her as next, just because I'm assuming that's the order we're doing things in. If you were just making a general comment, then I guess
I
I'm
was
reading the
going-
room wrong.
I can make a motion.
Please do.
I move that the City Commission supports the East Side Placemaking Project and approve a resolution establishing the social district to include option 4, which includes adopting the management plan for said social district.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure we're crystal clear, since option 4 wasn't in the packet, if you can articulate once again exactly
Can, the
what that is.
businesses on the north and south side of East 8th, just along the service drives and their parking lots.
Sean, can clarify?
Yeah, do you want that to go all the way to Garfield then? Because people, if they want to get to the other side, have to use the crosswalk at the intersection. Otherwise, you're forcing them to run through traffic.
Yeah. So we'll say from Garfield to the end of the service road on the north side
And the south
and the south side. Okay. Okay, any other comments on this? Questions? We will open it back up for public comment. Comments from previous will be considered in this deliberation as well. So does anybody want to make further public comment?
Did that get seconded?
Oh, sorry, it did not. Thank you for that, Heather. So is there a second for that motion?
Second.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Warner. Okay, yes, we have motion by Shaw, second by Warner. Thank you for that procedural. Now I will open up for any public comment on the proposal 4. Go right ahead, Ms. Nelson.
Well, you already know that I support that option 4, because I said that before. I would just add one thing from the guy from Washington Street, and whoever else talked about this, it might have been you. There is no timing on that light at all. And I will tell you that more than 15 years ago, I was promised by the city engineer that they would work on that to smooth the traffic out, and they never put it in. So I'm still holding them accountable.
Thank you, Judy. Any other public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back. And I just wanted to throw in really quickly about the parking issue that's been brought up. Right now, the 2 businesses that we'll be seeking in our next motion are on the south side of 8th Street. I will say that being part of the Traverse Heights neighborhood, going to their meetings, and for many years now, Lincoln Street actually loves when people park on the street because they have so many people who cut through quickly that having cars parked there actually slows it down. So where these businesses are established, if there is parking issues, I believe I can safely say that there are certain neighborhood streets that would love if you parked on their street in the Traverse Heights neighborhood to help slow down the traffic. So just wanted to throw that 2 cents in there. Any other comments or questions from the commissioners? Go ahead, Commissioner Abdul.
Yes, I wasn't planning on speaking about this, but I had spoken about it before, because it's especially true to me if we are trimming this social district down even more to an option 4, that it does reduce the amount of people that will be bringing things in, say pizza or other trash, or other stuff that creates trash from the outside area, and people will be traveling shorter distances. I have concerns with rolling 4 trash bins into the city's existing trash contract, since we know pretty clearly where that trash will be generated, and if the businesses that are participating are already interested in reducing the amount of single-use plastic or other waste that they're creating, it would seem a simpler solution to, okay, we can have placemaking, but if you have a business, you can have, and you've got a dumpster behind you, you can, at the end of your day, have a trash bin out front that just gets dumped into the dumpster, and then it solves the trash problem, and it doesn't have a potential issue as we've seen downtown or in general, or in the Cherry Festival now, where trash can stay in a bin overnight because the existing contract picks it up in the morning.
I think that's something that we can make a note of and have DPS follow up on, so thank you. Any other questions? Go ahead, Commissioner Anderson.
I'll be voting in favor of option 4 with a couple of caveats. I truly want to see the city consider opportunities for placemaking that are not centered on alcohol consumption. I think this is to some of the public comments regarding attracting families to the city. We are developing a reputation as Party City, and I think we should be sensitive to that, and we could do that by deploying our placemaking funds in a less alcohol-focused way. My other comment is that, as Commissioner Stanley mentioned, the success metrics are going to be very, very important in evaluating this pilot. The pilot is going to begin and end in the blink of an eye, and I would like to see sooner rather than later a definition from the planning department as to what the success metrics will be and what standards they are expecting this pilot to achieve in order for it to be continued.
Thank you. Commissioner Stanley?
I'll be voting no on option 4. Every place that I have experienced that is vibrant and, and has a diverse kind of culture in different neighborhoods, it really requires more than one block north and south. Any option that doesn't include the NOMI Collective, which would then be giving us really the nodes of a corridor and something to build off of, especially since that business owner requested that, is a non-starter to me. And the fact that we don't have public right-of-way there to work with, but they could be part of the social district. I think the questions around the safety of that intersection are extremely valid, and I see the city manager taking copious notes here that needs to be addressed regardless of whether or not the social district moves forward in any way, shape, or form. But as others have pointed out, social districts in other cities encompass most of an entire business district. So I'll be voting no because really, frankly, this is too small, in my opinion, to have any impact beyond the closing those service drives.
Thank you. Go ahead, Commissioner Shaw.
Yeah, just somewhat echoing Commissioner Stanley, whether or not option 4 passes or not, I think that the future of a social district in this area really depends on looking at traffic. Maybe we need to lower the speed to 25, look at crosswalks, and definitely look at how that intersection is handled, because that's what's stopping it from expanding in my point of view at this point.
Thank you. Any other comments? The only other thing I was going to mention that I have here in my scribbled notes is I don't disagree. Well, first of all, I would say that part of the Better Drinking Culture study was to look at emphasizing other areas of town. So I think that, and actually in this sense, that's what has started kind of looking at some of these revitalization projects around different neighborhoods. The other thing I would say is, I've lived right off of where I've lived on 8th Street for over 10 years now, and there was a point where that lot was a food truck hub. And by the middle of the summer, the food trucks were going other places because no one was supporting it. So if you build it, it doesn't mean that they come. So if that's what people want, I'm very happy to hear that. I hope people with really great ideas reach out to already existing local business owners or property owners and work on that. But then we all have to show up too if we want it to be there. Because right now, making a bottom line work, especially for food service, often involves serving alcohol, even if it's not the main priority. So I think that's part of a conversation we'll have more of later on this summer. But I just wanted to kind of point out that I don't think that's always everybody's knee-jerk reaction, but sometimes it just doesn't work out, and there has been that case already on 8th Street within the last few years that demonstrated that as well. So we just have to show up when it's there, I would say. So any other comments or questions? Seeing none? Oh, wait, go ahead, Mark.
I'd like to see something get started, but just to Commissioner Stanley's point, why I went for option 2, I was just looking to be more inclusive of other businesses instead of having to revisit this again in the near future.
Great, thank you. All right, I will call the vote then. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Treadwell?
Yes.
Commissioner Werner?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson? Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Commissioner Shaw?
Yes?
Commissioner Stanley?
No.
And Mayor Shamrow?
Yes, motion passes. Thank you all for working together to get on that, and thank you for the neighbors for bringing up the issues with the lights and such. I hope as we look at some of that, we can pick up this social district again in the future. Go ahead.
I make a kind of closing comment because it's not, it's more future looking. And if this continues into next year, I would encourage city manager to work with staff to look at opportunities for planting trees. There's a definite lack of trees in this area. Even in that alley that we talked about between Prout and the bakery, it's a 30-foot wide right-of-way, and we don't typically plant trees in alleys. There's a lot of space there, though, because the alley, as far as how it looks, appears to be about half of that 30 feet. And I'm sure that a spot could be carved out, dig out some pavement, and drop a tree in. So just thoughts for the future.
Thank you, Commissioner Warner. All right, we will move on to the next item in old business, which is social district permit approval for Earth and Ales and Oakwood proper. So with that, I will hand it over to, I guess, Benjamin really quickly.
Sure, yeah. We just put this on the agenda in the event that the social district was approved. We have these applications from two businesses, Earth and Ales and Oakwood Proper Burgers, and essentially they meet all the requirements for a social district permit now that a social district has been established, and so you've got a motion in your packet that would approve those two social district permits.
Does anybody have more questions about this permit or would like to make a motion? Go ahead, Mitch.
I'll move that the resolution recommending approval of the requests from Earth and Ales LLC, DBA Tank Space on 8th, located at 1110 East 8th Street, and Oakwood Proper Burgers located at 1108 East 8th Street, for social district permits to be approved, and that the city clerk be authorized to issue updated liquor license recommendations to both for them to operate such permits at their respective premises.
Support.
Thank you. Motion from Treadwell, second from Stanley. Any questions or comments on this item from the commission?
I think it's understood, but just to clarify, it's not a recommendation, they're liquor license
Oh, sorry.
registrations.
Yeah.
Yep.
Any questions or comments from the commission on this? Seeing none, any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Looking forward to seeing how that space is going to look in another couple weeks here. All right, with that, we'll move on to new business, and I'm going to hand this completely over to Liz. I'm very happy to hear it.
Howard, thank you very much. As you know, we've been dealing with a cyber incident for going on, it'll be 4 weeks. And I really am proud of the staff in the which way they did workarounds and pivots to make sure that we were able to still provide customer service during that difficult time. A lot of long hours that were had by many department heads and many different departments. And in light of the fact that we're still not out of the woods yet, and our team is pretty tired, I am recommending an extra day off as a thank you for the work they've already done, and in the sure knowledge that we're not done working to get through it. And we would work that out through an LOU process that has been done successfully in the past. Any staff that have to work on the 5th, like our police and fire and streets teams, they would get 8 hours put in their bank for use at another time.
Mayor?
Any questions, or I'd take a motion?
I move that the mayor and city clerk execute the necessary documents with the appropriate collective bargaining units to provide for a one-time additional paid day off on Friday, July 5, 2024, for all full-time employees of the city of Traverse City, as generally outlined in the June 27, 2024 communication from the city manager, with such documents subject to approval as to their substance by the city manager and their form by the city attorney.
Thank you, Mark.
Support.
Thank you, Jackie. So I've got a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Wilson, second by Commissioner Anderson. Is there any further discussion on this item? Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So everyone make note that both the 4th of July and 5th of July, our city offices will not be open or available to the public for some much-needed time off for our staff after a very difficult few weeks. So thank you all for bringing that to us. We appreciate it, and thank you all on the commission here for supporting that so we can offer that to the staff. All right, we'll move forward now to appointments. We've got the Grand Traverse County Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, and Mayor Pro Tem Wilson, you were the chair of that?
Oh,
I know.
yeah.
I know.
It was a while ago, and it was quick. Yeah, we met, I believe there's only one applicant, candidate, and the committee deemed this individual to be sufficient, competent.
Great.
Qualified, thank you.
All right, then I would take a motion, please.
I move that Thomas Stevens be appointed to the term expiring December 31, 2026, seat previously held by Shay O'Brien on the Grand Traverse County Board, or Grand Traverse County Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, as recommended by the ad hoc committee consisting of Mayor Pro Tem Wilson, Commissioner Shaw, and Commissioner Werner.
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Shaw. Okay, we've got a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Wilson, second by Commissioner Shaw. Any discussion? Seeing none, any public comment on this? Seeing none, bring it back for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, the next one is Light and Power. I was the chair of this with Commissioner Anderson and Commissioner Warner, as there was a seat to be an unexpired seat to be filled, with thanks to Ross Hammersley for all his service, but he was included on that. So we do have a motion here. I did want to clarify to everyone that Light and Power is one of the boards that if you serve on, you are not allowed to serve on any other boards. Susanna Tobin is one of the nominees here, and she has agreed to step down from her seat on the Historic Districts Commission, which we will deal with in a moment here. But I did want to clarify that. Go ahead.
So I know we have viewers and listeners who are very, very conscientious about those kinds of rules, and I want to point out that that applies to people, not to Commissioner Werner and myself.
Right, that's correct, yes.
That is correct.
Yes, commissioners can get more assignments, but public gets, for planning and TCLP are two boards that we, because of the workload that goes with them, that we do require that they just be only serving on those boards as citizens. So I would take a motion.
I move
Oh, thank you.
that Paul Heiberger be reappointed to the term expiring April 1st, 2029, and Susanna Tobin be appointed to the term expiring April 5th, 2027, seat previously held by Ross Hammersley, on the Traverse City Light and Power Board, as recommended by the ad hoc committee consisting of Mayor Shamrow, Commissioner Anderson, and Commissioner Werner.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson.
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Warner. Okay, we've got a motion. Any comments on this from the commission? Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you for that. All right, and finally, consideration of filling a seat vacated by Susanna Tobin from the Historic District Committee. And so this seat is specified. That board has one required seat, I think, be an architect. So this seat will be looking for an architect specifically. So just bearing that in mind, spreading the word if you know anyone. That is a city resident requirement too, correct?
Yes.
Yes. So if you know a city resident who is an architect, Lauren, I'd asked you, do they have to be currently certified, or what's the criteria for that?
I'm going to look at Ben.
Yeah, they have to have at least 2 years of experience as an architect and be a graduate of a recognized school of architecture, or be a registered architect in the state of Michigan. And we'll be really clear on that in our recruitment materials.
Okay, that's really good, because I know at one point we did have somebody who had a degree in architecture, but was no longer practicing, and so on historic districts, and we did not count, like, we didn't know if they would qualify or not. Susanna was still serving at the time, so that was not an issue, but clarifying that for anybody out there who has the requirements, putting the bat signal out, as it were. So I will take a motion in the meantime so we can start that search.
I'll move that the scope of the city, okay, just not use the word scope, that the scope of the City Commission Ad hoc Interview Committee established June 3rd, 2024 be expanded to include making a recommendation regarding additional appointment to the Historic Districts Commission, term expiring June 30th, 2025, vacated by Susanna Tobin, and that Mayor Pro Tem Wilson, Commissioner Shaw, and Commissioner Treadwell make a recommendation regarding these appointments.
Thank you, Commissioner Warner.
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Stanley. Any further comments on this?
So
Oh, go ahead.
just, so it could be a retiree or somebody like that, just hasn't practiced in a few years or something.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great.
Susanna has been a great asset to the city serving on this board, so even though I don't serve on the Historic District Commission, I'll be sad to see her no longer in that position.
But we're excited about her on TCLP. All right, any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion passes. And with that, we will open up to general public comment now. So anything on any item that anybody wants to talk about, please feel free.
Good evening. My name is Azadrill Stavis. I reside at 2931 North Lamb Road, Interlochen, Michigan. I am a non-resident, but what I'm here to address you on today does not have boundaries. Regarding the recent decision by the Supreme Court having to do with potentially criminalizing the homeless, and I had caught up with the article in the Record Eagle that was written the other day saying that the city will still be supporting and keeping the Pines open, or operational, as it were. I just wanted to just follow up with that, as I suppose that at this time, after that decision was made, it sets such a huge precedent in our area for the people who would like to see the Pines and other encampments that have been popping up, to have those places abolished and disassembled and whatnot, that I am here today to just encourage you folks and anyone else that is listening to this right now to keep supporting those people, because criminalizing the homeless and the impoverished is not going to solve the problem. In fact, it will definitely make it worse. I personally work 3 jobs, 70 to 80 hours a week. I was homeless at 14 through no fault of my own. I am always on the edge of losing everything, have nowhere to go. I could be greatly benefited by this funding project. And sorry, excuse me, I'm very tired too.
It's okay, no worries.
We can't just make it go away. We have to find solutions. And criminalizing people isn't okay, so please, please keep helping these people and don't bow down to the pressure of the other public that will want these people just removed, because sending them somewhere else isn't going to fix the problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
One quick question, if you don't mind, it's not required, but
Not at all.
if you're willing, would you spell your first and last name for me?
Aza is spelled A-Z-A. Driltz is D-R-I-E-L-T-S, and it's hyphenated Davis.
Thank you very
And
much.
excuse me, I'm on 4 hours of sleep. It's a very busy week for me.
Thank
too.
you for making the
No
time to
need-
come,
no need
Aza.
to
We appreciate
apologize.
it. Thank you.
My name is Kia Avery, 674 Bay Hill Drive, Apartment 8, Traverse City, Michigan, 49684, and I am a resident. The 2 papers I have in my hand kind of coincide with each other, so these are my questions, I guess, and then stuff from my heart. What is the city's solution to helping the homeless? Does the city have any solutions in place if the homeless if the homeless need some other place to go besides them living in the Pines? The Supreme Court ruling of people who are homeless not being able to camp or live somewhere on the streets is crazy. Where are they supposed to go? What solutions does the city have to help the homeless? How can the city make more affordable housing and extra beds and shelters maybe? More government help such as Section 8, MISHDA, and whatever else to help with people's rent. That goes to the CDBG funding, which I'm also low income, so that would be a beneficial thing to me. I don't know how to go about it, but that would be a beneficial thing, and probably for others as well. The people at the Pines and anyone who is experiencing homelessness are people just like you and I. They deserve respect and also the help to find affordable housing. I also feel that having shelters stay open all year round would be beneficial, such as Safe Harbor. Yeah, I've been homeless myself, and it's not easy. And I really feel we need more affordable housing. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for waiting patiently through the meeting.
You're welcome.
Hi, my name is Audrey Willett. I'm homeless. I currently live in my van. I've been here for a couple years. I came here with a dream to work on the tall ships, and I knew it was going to be hard. I didn't realize how hard it was going to be. And with this new ruling from the Supreme Court, I'm extremely worried about my community. Not just for myself, but for my community. We are not criminals. Some of us are sick, and some of us are just trying to survive. I currently work a couple jobs, trying to support myself. You know, I have to choose between school and housing and paying for my van that I, get to take me from point A to point B, hoping that it doesn't break down because it's going to be another $1,000 to fix it. I don't know what to do. I was sleeping in the Civic Center park, and in the middle of the night I get a pounding on my van door telling me I need to leave. Like, where am I supposed to go? Where can I go? I don't have housing and no hope of getting housing. And even if I get housing, I might get fired tomorrow. And so how am I going to continue to pay for housing? Or if my car breaks down, how am I going to get to work? This is an average person's struggle. It's not just somebody who's suffering from alcoholism or drugs. And even then, if they are, they still need help and they still need compassion, because that is what we are. We are a community who needs to come together and love one another and see that that person who is suffering deserves a home and deserves a place if they so choose to have a home and to have a place. I'm tired. I'm 35 years old and I'm tired. I'm tired of working for nothing. I'm tired of wondering when will it be my chance to have a little piece of the pie, just a little bit. I don't want to be rich. I don't need a mansion. All I need is, a place to sleep. I don't need a lot, just a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing with us.
Justin Reed, city resident. I would like to go ahead and ask a question about speed limits. Barry, I'm thinking I can answer that myself. The Michigan Vehicle Code, Act of 300 of 1949, it says, it pretty much states on there that, if I can find it again, but the short line to the answer is the Michigan State Police does the speed limit studies, and that has to be agreed upon the city engineer and the state police in order to post a decrease or increase of speed limit. So you might have a citizen up here saying, well, geez, at 35 miles per hour, I want it down to 25. Can the city make it happen? No. The city can go ahead and request a speed study being done upon with the state police. Now, that might backfire on them saying, well, it's 45 miles per hour right now. Well, I kind of, like I said, it's the state police who do that speed study. I think the transparency should be there, I think, whenever that question is asked. So, thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Any other public comment at this time? Seeing none, I just wanted to take a moment and thank everyone who spoke, but especially everyone who shared their stories with us. And I know I can't imagine how uncertain it must feel right now after that Supreme Court ruling. I will say, and I give testament again and credit to our staff, Lauren and I, our city attorney, were talking about this 6 weeks ago, knowing this was on the docket, and having a statement prepared so that we could put it out as quickly as possible that the city had no intention, no matter what the ruling was, of going and rounding up people at the Pines or trying to take people's homes away. We know that there's a struggle out there. This body did an excellent job where we could of finding funding to get 27 people into housing before the end of the year. It's a small thing that we could do. We continue to try and do more with what's available, tools available to us through zoning and funding tools and partners. But we want to rest assured, we understand that it makes absolutely no sense to round people up, criminalize them, fine them in ways that they'll never be able to pay, for them to end up back out on the street again tomorrow. Doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense on any level, including financially, for those who might try to argue that. That's not who we are and not how we operate as a city. And so I do give credit to Lauren for being prepared for every scenario and having that ready to go immediately, and that we do have an excellent city attorney with us and excellent staff who I think if you've encountered our police department at all, that's not their intention either. They want to make sure people are safe where they're at. We all want to find people to find permanent housing, and we all want to find solutions in the meantime for the in-between. But I cannot thank you all enough for sharing your stories with us and your experiences and coming forward and waiting through this entire meeting to share that. you said you are citizens and you are people here with us as well, and we absolutely see you and appreciate you speaking before everyone, because that takes a lot of bravery as well to share stories publicly, and we very much appreciate that, so thank you. Go ahead, another person who has experience.
So actually, this kind of brings together the public comment from our speakers previously, and also coming up on an election season. And I know in some states, people who are unsheltered are able to use a municipal building's address for a driver's license and/or for voter registration. Do we know if that's an option in the state of Michigan?
Sure, I'd be happy to speak to that. And actually, this is really timely because just today we met with Ryan Hannon from Century United Methodist Church to talk about more outreach we can do and public information. And anyone in the state of Michigan can register to vote where they most routinely sleep. And that can be not in a physical address. It could be where they use the intersection of the streets that are most close to where they routinely sleep. And with respect to mail, a mailing address, it's helpful to have a mailing address so we can communicate officially with voters, but it is not required. And so anyone who is unhoused that isn't registered to vote, I would strongly recommend that they register with their local clerk more than 14 days before the election, because that then alleviates some of the identification problems that sometimes exist for folks who don't have a state of Michigan photo ID.
Does anyone object if I suspend the rules for a moment? And I saw two hands go up to ask questions regarding what Benjamin was just saying, to allow for, please feel free to reapproach the podium and ask your question if you'd like.
It's not a question.
Okay, please share that.
I lost my driver's license in November when I changed my address to a cross street so that I could vote. I currently do not have the right to vote. I got my driver's license back, but I do not have the right to vote.
I'd be happy to connect with you after this, and I can tell you that we will make sure that you have the right to vote. The issue with respect to your driver's license is a matter that we're working to address with the Michigan Department of State, but it shouldn't be impacted. And so that's something that, I've even corresponded with Christy Dugan at the State Department regarding your situation, and am also meeting with Representative Kofia tomorrow.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great.
And
I'd like to chat with you after, though, if you'd be willing.
I can stay.
Great,
So.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I praised our attorney, Lauren Triple-Out, for being prepared for this Supreme Court ruling, but we have touched on voters' rights, and we are also very fortunate that our clerk, Benjamin Marentet, is a nationally recognized worker on voters' rights and voting procedures, and really, we are very, very lucky with the staff we have, and I hope this is just a moment to take a public service announcement, I guess, that we do have really talented and really knowledgeable staff here, so please feel free to always approach our clerk's office during the day, other than 4th of July and 5th of July, as we just gave them off. But other than that, we do give, they do have a lot of information, and if they don't have it, they find it very quickly. So I'm very grateful for our staff for that, and just a reminder that they are here to help everyone. So, is there any other comments before we adjourn? Well, Tim Warner had his hand up here, and then you.
Yeah, just at the very start of April, Governor Whitmer signed legislation that adds some flexibility to setting local speed limits. There's still the 85th percentile study needed, but extenuating circumstances such as pedestrian safety, schools, et cetera, can be considered. And so maybe in the next several months, winter, whatever it's going to be, we as a body could ask our city attorney to come back with a summary that we can understand that helps us.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Mitch?
Yes, I would just like to thank members of staff, both present and that were present earlier, and members of the public. I know this is a very stressful week, even without the extenuating circumstances that staff is currently dealing with. It's very hectic on both city residents and anybody trying to get through Traverse City. So thank you for making it through this meeting, and I hope everybody survives the week unscathed.
Thank you. All right, well, with that.
If to our neighbors to the north, Happy Canada Day.
Yes, that's true. Happy Canada Day today. You're wearing your shirt for that, Mitch. And I don't think I could say anything more. Everybody, I hope you have an enjoyable Cherry Festival week, however you choose to spend it. And thank you all for attending or watching tonight. Have a great night. Meeting adjourned.